Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. New York City was shining brightly that evening. The streets were teeming with luxury cars and hurried passers-by, but nothing attracted as much attention as a black Bentley gliding silently through Midtown. Marcus Johnson, an experienced chauffeur loyal to the Whitmore family for 5 years, drove calmly, respecting every light, every signal, every detail. In the back, Emma Whitmore, only daughter of billionaire Richard Whitmore, was nervously tapping away at her phone, wearing a shimmering Dior gown. Her evening had been perfect, until she thought her precious handbag had disappeared. In a burst of panic and pride, she turned to Marcus. "You took it. You stole it from me." Marcus, surprised, tried to defend himself. "Emma, I assure you I haven't touched anything. I've been driving for you for 5 years, you know me." But Emma, blinded by anger and the power her name gave her, ignored his words. She got out of the vehicle screaming, and the scene quickly attracted the attention of a passing police patrol. Influenced by the prestige of the Whitmore family and Emma's assertive character, the officers arrested Marcus without even checking the facts. It was the beginning of a nightmare for Marcus. In a matter of minutes, his life was turned upside down. His honor, his freedom, his reputation, everything seemed to collapse. And what Emma didn't know was that this unjust and impulsive accusation would sow the seeds of a long and methodical revenge, a revenge that would resurface 3 years later, more powerful than anything she could have imagined. New York, Spring 2021. The skyscrapers reflected the orange light of dusk as the city vibrated with its relentless energy. Marcus Johnson, a 32-year-old black man, drove his black Bentley calmly and professionally. The Whitmore family's personal chauffeur for 5 years, he knew every habit, every demand, every whim of his young employer, Emma Whitmore. Emma, wearing a shimmering evening gown, nervously tapped away at her phone. The party had been a success, but as soon as she got into the car, she thought her purse, filled with jewelry and credit cards, had disappeared. Panic made her turn to Marcus with accusing eyes. "You stole it from me, Marcus." Marcus, surprised and shocked, raised his hands. "Madam, I swear I haven't taken anything. I've been driving for you for 5 years. You know I would never do that." But his words only inflamed Emma further. Her fear mixed with pride drove her to scream into the street, attracting the attention of a passing police patrol. Minutes later, Marcus was handcuffed, unable to defend himself against the authority and influence of the Whitmore family. "He stole my bag," Emma shouted, her firm, authoritative tone leaving no doubt. The police, impressed by her confidence and the prestige of her family, took her away without question. In this quick scene, Marcus saw his life turned upside down. His freedom was disappearing before his eyes, but worse still, his honor and reputation were shattered. The neighbors murmured, some shocked, others silent before the power of money. As he was led away to the police car, Marcus turned to Emma one last time, his eyes filled with pain but also with a newfound determination. "You will see. One day, the truth will come out, and you will regret what you did." At that moment, he didn't know how or when, but he knew he would never remain a victim. Marcus Johnson spent his first night in his cell with a sense of injustice that burned brighter than any fear. The silence of the prison contrasted sharply with the tumult of the city he had left behind. Every click of the lock, every step down the corridor, reinforced his rage, but also his determination. Outside, news of his arrest spread quickly. His colleagues, friends, and neighbors were shocked. Many had known Marcus for years, knew of his loyalty and integrity. But faced with the Whitmore's power and influence, no one dared to intervene directly. His devastated family tried to support him from the outside. His mother, Mary Johnson, a gentle but strong woman, cried every night, praying for his release. His younger brother, Elijah, was furious and wanted to immediately confront Emma Whitmore, but Marcus dissuaded him in his letters from prison. "Stay calm, be careful. Revenge is not yet here." Marcus's life was swept away in an instant. He lost his job, his house was put up for sale to pay his legal fees, and his name was tarnished in the newspapers and on social media. People now viewed him with suspicion, believing Emma's accusation. But in his despair, a seed began to germinate. Marcus knew he could not let this injustice define his life. Every humiliation, every contemptuous look, every door closed in his face strengthened his desire for justice and revenge. "I will come back, stronger. And when I come back, no one, not even the Whitmore family, will be able to stop me," he whispered to the silent night, thus sealing the beginning of his transformation. It was the moment Marcus realized his fall was only the beginning of a much greater plan, to reclaim his dignity, restore his name, and one day show Emma Whitmore that the truth cannot be stifled by money or power. Prison wasn't just a place of deprivation of liberty. For Marcus Johnson, it was a battleground for spirit and resilience. The first few days were the hardest. The shock of injustice, the loneliness, and the suspicious stares of other inmates weighed on him like a burden. But Marcus had something many lacked: an iron will. He observed his surroundings, learned the prison routines, and began building alliances with inmates respected for their wisdom and experience. Among them, he met Jerome, a former lawyer convicted of financial fraud, who became his mentor and guide. "Prison doesn't destroy those with a plan, Marcus. It only reveals who you really are," Jerome told him one evening as they shared a few pages of an old law textbook. Marcus spent his days studying law and learning about business and finance from the prison library. Every hour spent learning was a building block for his future edifice of revenge and success. He forged a strict discipline for himself: exercises, reading, strategies, and above all, reflection on how he could one day take back his life and clear his name. But prison also taught him patience. He understood that raw anger was not enough and that revenge had to be intelligent, methodical, and relentless. He outlined his plan: regain his reputation, build his success, and expose those who had wrongly accused him. 3 years in that cell transformed Marcus. The man who had been wrongly arrested was still there, but now he was stronger, more cunning, and more determined. His dreams of revenge were no longer just silent wishes, they were concrete plans, ready to be executed the moment he was released. And Marcus knew one thing for sure: when he returned to the outside world, nothing and no one would be able to stop him. On the day of his release, Marcus Johnson felt a strange mixture of relief and pent-up tension. 3 years in prison had changed him, sharpened his mind and his resolve. As he walked through the penitentiary gates, the air of New York seemed different, brighter, more hopeful, as if the city itself recognized that he had returned to reclaim what was his. His lawyer, Mr. Harrison, a 55-year-old man with a sharp gaze, was waiting for him outside. "Marcus, justice has finally spoken. The videos and testimonies confirm your innocence. You can resume your life. But be careful, you came out with an advantage: patience and preparation." Marcus nodded. He knew the real battle was only just beginning. His reputation had been tarnished, his family had suffered, and his career had been destroyed. He had to rebuild not only his life, but his image as well. Back home, he found his mother, Mary, and his brother Elijah. The reunion was moving. Tears flowed, hugs lasted for minutes, but deep inside Marcus, a flame still burned: the desire for justice and intelligent revenge. He began with a simple but effective plan. With his savings and a few contacts made before his arrest, Marcus founded a security and logistics company. But he didn't just want to make money, he wanted to create influence, build a strong network, and prepare for the moment when he might confront Emma Whitmore and her family. Every move was calculated. Every investment, every partnership, every business decision was carefully considered. Marcus was no longer the loyal chauffeur of his days. He had become a strategist, a patient and methodical man, determined to transform the injustice he had suffered into power and respect. And in the privacy of his mind, he repeated once again the promise he had made to himself behind bars. "Emma Whitmore, you have no idea what you're in for." A few months after his release, Marcus Johnson was no longer the same man he had been before. The scars of prison and injustice had left their mark, but they had also forged his determination and intelligence. His small security and logistics business was booming, surprising even his former contacts. Marcus wasn't just an entrepreneur, he had become a strategist. Every contract he signed was carefully chosen to strengthen his network and increase his influence. His clients, impressed by his professionalism and charisma, recommended him, and his name began to circulate in Manhattan business circles. But Marcus wasn't just looking for financial success. He wanted to ensure his comeback would be noticed by those who had humiliated him, especially Emma Whitmore. He invested in visible projects, sponsored high-profile charity events, and began appearing in the media as a respected self-made man, an example of resilience and success. Every appearance, every success, was a stone laid on the path to his revenge. But Marcus remained in control. He didn't just want to humiliate Emma with his success, he wanted the truth to come out, for society to discover the injustice he had suffered. His business connections multiplied. Respected investors, influential lawyers, and even a few former inmates he had met in prison became his allies. Marcus turned every obstacle into an opportunity, and every affront into motivation. At home, his reunion with his family gave him strength and balance. His mother, Mary, and his brother, Elijah, were proud and admiring of the man he had become. But Marcus kept his goal in mind: Emma Whitmore must pay, not with blind vengeance, but with intelligence and method. One evening, while gazing at the New York skyline from his elegant apartment, Marcus whispered quietly, "I've come back. And when the time comes, you'll know what it means to be broken by those you underestimate." His rebirth was complete. He was no longer the wrongly accused chauffeur. He was Marcus Johnson, strategist, entrepreneur, and master of his own destiny, ready to take back what had been stolen from him. Emma Whitmore had never cared about Marcus after she had him arrested. To her, he was nothing more than an inconvenient memory, quickly forgotten amid the parties, travel, and luxuries her life had accustomed her to. But fate had other plans. A few years after the incident, Emma attended a prestigious charity reception in the heart of Manhattan. Celebrities, financiers, and philanthropists crowded into the grand lobby, lit by crystal chandeliers and decorated with rare tapestries. Everything was perfect, until she noticed a man who seemed to attract attention as much for his elegance as for his charisma. Marcus Johnson. Under his new name, Marcus was no longer the humble, self-effacing chauffeur of his days. His tailored suit and confident gaze revealed the man he had become: powerful, influential, and respected. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, though she didn't immediately recognize him. Marcus, however, didn't let anything show. He watched Emma from afar, savoring the tension he could already sense. He knew she still believed herself protected by the power of her name and her family's fortune. He wanted his presence at this reception not just to be noticed, but memorable. As the evening progressed, Marcus approached Emma, engaging her in conversation calmly and politely. His words were measured, each sentence carefully chosen to subtly remind Emma that the past was never far away. He recalled specific details of the incident 3 years earlier, stirring a quiet sense of concern in Emma's mind. "It's amazing how some things you think you've forgotten always come back," Marcus murmured with a slight smile. Emma felt her blood run cold. That voice, that bearing, something about that look reminded her all too well of Marcus Johnson, her old driver. But she tried to keep her cool, aware that everyone around her could see her. Marcus had entered Emma's world, but he didn't want to rush into it. Revenge wasn't meant to be quick or obvious. Every gesture, every word, every smile was a step toward the final confrontation, carefully orchestrated so that the truth would come out when Emma least expected it. And in the silence of his mind, Marcus repeated to himself, "Patience. Everything has a price. And you, Emma Whitmore, you have no idea what awaits you." Marcus Johnson had patiently waited for the right moment. 3 years after the injustice he had suffered, he was no longer the self-effacing chauffeur everyone knew. He had become a powerful man, respected in New York's business and influential circles. And now, Emma Whitmore would feel, for the first time, the weight of her actions. The first stage of her confrontation was subtle. Marcus appeared at events where Emma showed up, always under his new name and with impeccable elegance. Each time, he left clues she couldn't ignore: a detail about the evening of the supposed robbery, a comment about the loyal driver she had betrayed, an enigmatic smile that awakened her guilt. At a charity gala, he finally approached her for a direct exchange, while remaining polite and courteous. "Emma, there are things we think are buried, but some refuse to remain silent," he said calmly, his eyes shining with an icy intensity. Emma felt her heart race. He knew too many details. Too many memories she had wanted to erase. Her lips trembled slightly, and she tried to look away, but Marcus, with disconcerting calm, continued. "Remember that night, the panic, the accusations. You stole something from me, Emma. Not just a bag, my freedom, my honor." The silence that followed hung over the room like a cloud. The guests around didn't understand the tension, but Marcus savored every second. He didn't want a physical confrontation or immediate drama. His revenge was mental, methodical. He wanted guilt, fear, and shame to settle in Emma's mind. In the back of his mind, Marcus smiled to himself. Every word, every look, every detail recalled was one step closer to restoring his honor and bringing down the one who had humiliated him. He knew the moment when the truth would come out publicly was not far off. And as he left the gala, Emma stood frozen, unable to speak, with a repetitive thought haunting her. But, how is that possible? Marcus, behind his outward calm, knew that the most crucial part of his revenge was about to begin. The long-awaited moment arrived at a press conference carefully orchestrated by Marcus Johnson. New York journalists had gathered en masse, intrigued by the announcement of a man who claimed to have been the victim of a monumental injustice involving the Whitmore family. Marcus took the stage with implacable calm. He wore an impeccable black suit, every gesture measured, every word weighed. Behind him, a giant screen displayed images and videos from the famous evening 3 years ago. The room held its breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began in a clear voice, "what you are about to see is not just the story of an alleged robbery. It is the story of a life shattered by a false accusation, of a reputation destroyed by fear and the power of money." He showed the footage from the car, the witnesses, and most importantly, the surveillance videos that proved Marcus had never touched Emma Whitmore's bag. Every detail was exposed, relentless and irrefutable. Emma, present among the guests and in shock, couldn't take her eyes off the screen. Her face paled as the reporters frantically took notes, asking Marcus questions about the nature of the injustice he had suffered. "I wasn't just a driver," Marcus continued, "I was a wrongly accused man, locked up for 3 years for a crime I never committed. And today, the truth is finally coming out." The entire room fell silent, fascinated and shocked by Marcus's strength and control. Emma, publicly humiliated, felt her world crumbling. The gazes of the reporters and guests were now turned toward her with suspicion and judgment. Marcus ended his statement with these words. "Injustice may seem powerful, but it never lasts forever. Patience, perseverance, and truth are weapons that no one can stop." The room's murmur turned into a media frenzy. Social media exploded, and Marcus's story went viral within hours. Emma Whitmore, once proud and confident, found herself helpless, aware that her reputation had been irreparably tarnished. For Marcus, it was a moment of quiet but resounding victory. The truth was finally out, and he had shown the world that he was not just innocent, he was strong, strategic, and in control of his own destiny. After the press conference, the media hype surrounding Marcus Johnson spiraled out of control. Newspapers, television stations, and social media outlets focused on him and the injustice he had suffered. Emma Whitmore, who thought she could escape the consequences of her actions, now found herself at the center of a public storm. The Whitmore family initially tried to downplay the case, sending representatives and lawyers to calm journalists and investors. But Marcus had anticipated this reaction. With his legal team and influential allies, he launched a lawsuit for false accusation and defamation. The evidence was irrefutable, and public opinion fervently supported Marcus. During the hearing, Marcus remained calm and collected. His testimony, accompanied by videos, testimony from neighbors, and experts, demonstrated the extent to which Emma had acted out of arrogance and power, without the slightest regard for the truth. The Whitmore family's lawyer struggled to dispute the facts. Every defense fell apart in the face of Marcus's meticulously prepared methodology and evidence. The judge, impressed by the clarity of the evidence and the seriousness of the unjustified accusation, declared, "This case is a stark reminder that no one is above truth and justice. The actions of the accusing party have caused irreparable harm. The court recognizes the innocence of Mr. Marcus Johnson and convicts Ms. Whitmore of defamation and false accusation." In the media, the story became an example of resilience and triumphant justice. Marcus not only won the case, he maintained his dignity and refused to resort to physical revenge. He left the humiliation and reparation to the law and society. Emma Whitmore, publicly and legally humiliated, now had to face the consequences of her actions. Society now saw Marcus as a symbol of justice and intelligence in the face of injustice. He had not only restored its honor, but had also proven that power and money were not enough to suppress the truth. Marcus, however, knew the battle was won. He gazed at the New York skyline from his desk, a quiet satisfaction in his heart. He had transformed his pain into strength, his fall into rebirth, and injustice into triumph. Marcus Johnson was no longer the same man who had been wrongly accused 3 years earlier. The revenge he had patiently orchestrated had taken the form of justice, success, and respect. With his reputation restored and his business thriving, he had become a symbol of resilience for his community and all those who had suffered injustice. Emma Whitmore, on the other hand, had been publicly and legally humiliated. The lesson was harsh. Power and money can never suppress the truth or right an injustice on their own. She timidly began to seek redress, but Marcus didn't seek to humiliate her further. He let justice and society do their work. Marcus, in his office overlooking the Manhattan skyline, gazed serenely at the city. His thoughts turned to his mother, Mary, and his brother, Elijah, proud and grateful for the man he had become. His anger had been transformed into strength, his pain into motivation. He remembered the words of Jerome, his mentor in prison. "Prison doesn't destroy those with a plan, Marcus. It reveals who you really are." Yes, he had been broken, but he had rebuilt himself. Justice had triumphed, and the truth had come out in a resounding way. Marcus had proven that patience, strategy, and intelligence are sometimes the most powerful weapons against injustice. And as the sun set over New York, illuminating the skyscrapers and streets below, Marcus smiled to himself. He knew that, despite the hardships and humiliations, he had gained far more than just the restoration of his honor. He had gained his inner freedom, his dignity, and the respect of the entire world. In this peaceful silence, he murmured, "Truth always triumphs. And those who doubt will always learn that injustice has a price." Thus ended Marcus Johnson's journey, from victim to strategist, from humiliated to victorious, transforming pain into power and showing that resilience and intelligence are the true keys to triumph.